Hey everyone, this is Noah Zerby. Welcome back to my Model United Nations video series. This video series focuses on helping students prepare for the Model United Nations of the Far West Conference, held every April in San Francisco. While the video focuses on the rules for MUNFW, the basic concepts of parliamentary procedure are applicable to Model United Nations conferences more generally. Today, we'll be looking at resolutions. Resolutions are the formal text adopted by the United Nations General Assembly, Security Council, and other UN bodies. In a sense, they're similar to bills adopted by Congress or legislative bodies around the world. They are the documents that codify the formal decisions of the United Nations. As such, they have a very specific formatting and content requirements. In this video, we'll explore the structure of UN resolutions, the numbering systems they use, and briefly discuss how to draft your first one. Let's begin by looking at a sample resolution. We'll use this one drafted by a former Humboldt State University student who represented the People's Republic of China at the 65th annual session of Model United Nations of the Far West. You should immediately observe that the resolution has 5 separate sections. At the top of the page is the heading, followed by the title, the salutation, and the body, which is divided into 2 sections, preambular and operative clauses, with each clause forming their own paragraph. Let's look at each section in more detail. The heading for resolution should appear in the upper left-hand corner. The first line contains the number of the resolution using the United Nations numbering system. In this sample, the line reads A/65/3/res.1. What does all this mean? The letter indicates the committee to which the resolution was submitted. The A in this resolution indicates that it is a resolution of the General Assembly or one of its subsidiary committees, such as First Committee or Fourth Committee. Different committees use different standard letters. Security Council resolutions, for example, begin with the letter S, while the Economic and Social Council, or ECOSOC, uses the letter E. Other bodies may use slightly different nomenclatures. The first number after the slash indicates the session to which the resolution is submitted. This is always the session listed on the conference program. In this case, the resolution was prepared for the 65th session, so the number is 65. The next number corresponds to the topic number assigned to the agenda item. Because each committee has a maximum of 3 topics, this number should always be 1, 2, or 3. The final item on the first line is res.1. This is the resolution number that will be assigned to the resolutions as they are submitted to the chair at conference. For now, just use res.1. Taken collectively, you get the resolution number A/65/3/res.1 as our first line. The second line lists the name of your committee. So if you're in Second Committee of the General Assembly, this line would read Second Committee. In our sample resolution, we're addressing the resolution to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, or UNHCR. On the third line, the current annual session in Roman numerals. This resolution is from the 65th session, so it's listed as LXV session, with Roman numerals LXV corresponding to 65. The fourth line is the name of the country or countries sponsoring the resolution. In this case, the resolution has only one sponsor, the People's Republic of China. In conference, this will change over time as countries add or remove themselves from sponsorship. There are some differences between committees in how sponsorship is approached. Some conferences will have a minimum number of sponsors for a resolution to be considered, but for now, just list your country's name. Some countries distinguish between sponsors, who help shape the language and actively participate in the crafting of the resolution, and signatories, who are interested in hearing a proposal discussed but are not necessarily bound to support it. Next, we have the title. In this case, the resolution is entitled Addressing the Reintegration of Displaced Persons in the Transition from Relief to Development. The title should always be centered and is either bolded or written in all caps. In general, the title should be closely aligned with the topic of debate and should provide a summary of the content of the resolution itself. In other words, the title should capture the overall content of the resolution. Next comes the salutation. In general, the salutation is the committee to which the resolution is addressed. In this case, it's the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. If this were a Security Council resolution, it would read the Security Council. Note that the salutation is always followed by a comma. There is one situation in which the salutation can get a little confusing. If you're in the subcommittee of the General Assembly, that is one of the numbered committees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, this line will read the General Assembly and not, for example, the First Committee. Your committee name will appear in the header, but the resolution itself will formally come from the General Assembly, and the General Assembly should appear in the salutation. Next, we get to the actual content, the actual text or body of the resolution. This text is always broken up into two parts: preambular clauses and operative clauses. Each clause is written as a separate paragraph, with the first line of each paragraph indented 5 spaces and the initiating phrase underlined or italicized. Each clause is separated by a double space from the next clause. The first group of paragraphs in the resolution are the preambular clauses. Preambular clauses set the context for the resolution and contain the justification for the resolution. They are, in a sense, the whys of the resolution. Preambular clauses always begin with an adjective or participle, for example, taking note of, recalling, cognizant of, or calling attention to. They cite previous resolutions or work and provide the background information on the topic. They might also describe the complexity or the various aspects of the issue, the reasons for action, the needs of specific groups, or what action might be required to be taken to address the issue. Generally, preambular clauses are organized from the most general to the most specific. Preambular clauses are never numbered, and each ends with a comma. You can see all of this in our sample resolution. Note that the first preambular clause cites previous resolutions on this topic, while the next 3 clauses establish the scope of the problem and outline the rationale for the resolution itself. Note that once a resolution is accepted and the committee moves into substantive debate, preambular clauses cannot be amended. Resolutions have been defeated because of poorly worded preambular clauses that could not be fixed in committee, so be particularly careful when crafting your preambular clauses. The next group of clauses in the body of the resolution are the operative clauses. Operative clauses outline the action to be undertaken. They begin with action verbs like applauds, requests, or urges. Each operative clause is numbered and ends with a semicolon, except for the very last clause, which ends with a period. In general, your operative clauses should follow logically from the preambular clauses. With the exception of the Security Council resolutions adopted under Chapter 7 of the Charter, UN resolutions express the opinion of the international community, but are not generally considered legally binding. The weight afforded a resolution depends on the unanimity of the opinion it expresses. Thus, a resolution adopted by consensus, without a vote or unanimously, is considered more significant and, in a sense, more binding than a resolution that passes by a narrow majority. Because of this, developing a consensus around a resolution is critically important. Debates over whether a resolution should call upon, urge, or welcome member states to take action, for example, can often take days or weeks to resolve. The United Nations regularly makes use of agreed language. Rather than starting a new resolution on a given topic every year, a committee often begins with a resolution passed unanimously in a previous session and then modifies it slightly in an effort to move the agenda forward. Because of this, you'll often hear the United Nations pass a resolution similar to a resolution passed in previous years, year after year, on a given topic. Agreed language is your friend, as it provides a foundation on which to build future resolutions. It bridges differences between delegations, as member states have already agreed to the phrasing in previous sessions. Thus, examining resolutions previously passed by the United Nations on your topic and citing them in your resolution is a good first step for drafting any resolution at conference. When drafting your resolutions, it's important to keep in mind the scope of the committee, its agenda, and your member state's perspective. Resolutions that call for the creation of a new committee, for example, are rarely successful. The United Nations already has lots of committees and subcommittees, specialized agencies, and so on. So it's likely there's already a group responsible for the work you're proposing. Then there's the financing of any new body. Member states rarely want to be responsible for funding additional agencies. Then there's the membership composition of a body. In short, don't suggest the creation of new bodies. Instead, assign work to existing groups. Strong resolutions are well written and free from grammatical and spelling errors. They cite relevant work already done by the United Nations, usually recalling or reaffirming its commitment to resolutions previously passed. Your research for your own resolution should therefore begin with a review of resolutions previously passed by the United Nations addressing your topic. When citing resolutions in this way, you generally only use the session number and resolution number for General Assembly resolutions, and the resolution number and year for Security Council resolutions. If your resolution is written for a committee different than the resolution you're citing, you'll want to add the committee that passed this resolution to the citation. If you're in the same body, you can omit this. Thus, in our sample resolution, we begin by recalling resolutions previously passed by this committee. Specifically, we recall Resolution 64 from the 162nd session of 2009 and Resolution 66 from the 165th session, among others. If we were citing resolutions of another UN organ, it would be necessary to include the name of that organ. Thus, Resolution 64 from the General Assembly's 162nd session in 2003 would be cited as Resolution 64/162 in a resolution written for the General Assembly or one of its subcommittees. But it would be written as General Assembly Resolution 64/162 if cited by the Security Council. Similarly, Resolution 1325, passed by the Security Council in the year 2000, would be cited as Resolution 1326/2000 by the Security Council, but it would be cited as Security Council Resolution 1326/2000 if cited by the General Assembly. Remember, the most effective resolutions cite precedent, are feasible, and precise. They stay true to the committee's jurisdiction and generally avoid creating new bodies. Finally, a few other things to keep in mind as you craft your resolution. The phrase member states and governments is always capitalized when referring to UN members. You should always use the phrase member states and not countries unless you're using it with a qualifying adjective, such as donor countries, affected countries, or the like. Next, the phrase United Nations is always spelled out and never abbreviated to UN unless it's part of a formal name, like UNHCR 2004 process. And finally, remember it's always Secretary General with a dash. With all that, you should now be ready to begin drafting your own resolutions. Good luck.